A current WWE superstar has arrived in another Japanese promotion. WWE is now working with them, I guess. We're going to talk about that. Plus, Mercedes Moné has been given creative control in AEW. I got some thoughts on that and some recent words from Will Ospreay. It's all coming up right here on The Ango Show.
Yes.
Welcome back to The Ango Show. If you're new here, click subscribe. Trust me, it's worth it. I want to kick things off with Will Ospreay. He was talking about the state of AEW when speaking with Shaquille Majori of CBS Sports. He gave his overall thoughts and opinions on AEW. And look, I feel like this is something I definitely need to react to because I think this is actually a really good, positive thing. I think sometimes in the IWC, Will Ospreay gets a lot of shit for no reason. And I get a lot of the old heads in the business. They have a major problem with Will Ospreay. I really do like this guy. He's one of my favorites in the business. But I think it's really important to acknowledge why this is so positive. So he said something like, it's all fairly new to me. I do believe we have had this string of bad luck when it comes to criticism where the ratings come in and a lot of people live on that. Right now, we're in a rebuilding phase, and they're always hard. I was discussing this with some of my friends a little while ago. Even as a wrestler, 5 years in, you do find yourself. You always hit a plateau. Whether that's within your character or ability trying to get booked elsewhere, there's always that 5-year-old growing pain. I think every company goes through it. If we're going to look back 5 years to what AEW was doing, it was low. The way that they are thriving right now, it's inspiring and something to hit. Okay, you guys are doing that. We have to change the bar and see what we have to do to change things up. I'm not one of these people who shy away from it. I enjoy criticism. Someone was criticizing the way I dress. I completely understand that's their flavor of a championship representative. If I ever walk around my area of Essex, that is how people dress. The complete authenticity of how I look and how the people around my area talk, I do get it, but I live in a world where this is how people dress, act, and talk. I do love saying, look at all the good we're doing. Look at the killer matches we're doing. In the same sense, we do have to take criticisms on board because that's how we're going to grow as a company. And these comments from Will Ospreay are absolutely incredible for a variety of reasons. But one that we need to discuss is the talk about ratings, because AEW does get criticism for ratings. And I'll be honest with you guys, as somebody who doesn't give a rat's ass about ratings, the reason why I don't feel bad for AEW in this regard is because Tony Khan tweets a lot about ratings. Tony Khan is always talking about ratings. And Tony Khan does this because he can get people talking about AEW by talking about ratings. When you're booking wrestling for the sickos and the hardcore audience, this is what people are talking about, and Tony Khan does lean into that. That's why I don't feel bad for AEW when it comes to the ratings talk, because I feel like since day one, even when their product was very good creatively, there's always been this talk about ratings. Now, with that being said, though, I do have to give Will Ospreay credit here. One, he's acknowledging that AEW has hit a plateau and is in a rebuilding phase. And I think the best way to improve your product is by actually admitting that there is something wrong with it. But the other thing I really want to give credit to Will Ospreay for is that this is a company that is young. This is a company that doesn't really have a face of the company, especially when it comes to public interviews and stuff like that. You got to have somebody who's a good representative. And maybe fans don't look at Will Ospreay as that guy, but I don't feel like AEW truly has that guy. And I think Will Ospreay can be that guy. By listening to this interview, I definitely have a lot of confidence in Will Ospreay. I like the way that he's handled these questions, but most importantly, I like the fact that he understands that criticism could create opportunities for you. And I also like the fact that he's very well aware of some of the circumstances surrounding the company. That's what you need in a guy who's going to be the top guy. I'm not sure if he's trying to be the face of the company, but I do like the fact that he handles these questions with a lot of positivity and a lot of optimism. I want to turn our attention to Mercedes Moné. And this comes from another interview where I genuinely don't know if this is Mercedes being in character or not. So let me preface everything by saying she might be in character here. But in a new interview with TMZ Sports, she did confirm that she has creative control over her work in AEW, but she does work closely with AEW president Tony Khan. She goes on to say that it's a great combination of the efforts of both of them. She really does seem to like her job with AEW, but You know, I want to talk a little bit about that creative control aspect of things, because I think this is a really important thing that people need to understand. This is somewhat of an issue in the history of WCW. Not somewhat, it is, right? When you bring in a person and you tell them that they have creative control, what exactly does that mean? Does Mercedes have creative control in the sense that, you know, she's able to pitch ideas and tell Tony Khan, like, hey, these are my ideas. These are where I kind of want to go with the storyline. This is who I kind of want to work with. Or is this a scenario where Mercedes is like, hey, I'm not taking the pin here. I'm not doing that bullshit. I'm not doing that bullshit. And the thing is, I've never really been against somebody having some level of creative input. But I think there's a difference that we need to look at. Input and control. Because we're hearing stories of AEW talent already turning down pitches. We heard it with Miro. We're now hearing it with Ricky Starks. And it's not a new thing, right? We have heard from people in reports, and obviously we take reports with a grain of salt, but we have heard through reports that there were talent who were not willing to do certain things in AEW. Does it necessarily make sense to sign a free agent and offer that ability by default? Personally, I don't think so. I don't think that's the right call. But this could very well be Mercedes in character. And again, it depends. Are we talking creative input or creative control? I like Mercedes. I think she's badass. I think she's doing great in AEW. I love everything about her work. So, you know, at the end of the day, I think maybe creative control could kind of be an issue, not just because it's Mercedes, but because any wrestler having creative control in 2024 could be problematic. But if she's working alongside with Tony Khan and there's like a really good understanding, I have no problem with it at all. In our final topic, we're going to be discussing Meiko Satomura, who has joined DDT Pro Wrestling. But this is where it gets really interesting, because Meiko Satomura has been contracted to WWE. We haven't seen her since NXT Roadblock 2023. And guys, it's literally June 29th, 24 this year. I mean, it's been a very long time since we've seen her on WWE programming. And she appeared on DDT Pro Wrestling. She was on the DDT Pro Toten Train wrestling match. And what makes everything even more interesting is that she is being regarded to as a WWE superstar. Now, is WWE allowing her to wrestle in Japan, do her thing in Japan, live in Japan because she's a legend? Because WWE, you know, they respect her. They don't have any creative plans for her in WWE. That's one big possibility. But is WWE trying to use Meiko Satomura to help build relationships in Japan? We all know WWE wants that global expansion. We all know that Japan is a very big market. We know that WWE is trying to strengthen their relationships with Pro Wrestling Noah. We've seen Charlie Dempsey from NXT go into All Japan Pro Wrestling. I mean, guys, the way that I look at it this way, it's like, you know, if they're being respectful and they're being cool and they're like, listen, we don't have creative plans for you. We're not moving you out to the United States. We're still going to contract you, you know, maybe a Legends deal of some kind. I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but hey, we're cool with you just wrestling in Japan. Maybe that's all this is, right? Maybe WWE just looks at it and says, we approve. Or maybe this is WWE opening the forbidden door again. And by the way, I know everybody keeps talking about the prohibited portal. I think that is so silly, but of course, wrestling is silly in anyways. And I don't think WWE is actually using that terminology, by the way. But I did want to bring that up because I do think it is fascinating to see that WWE stars are popping up in other promotions. And in the case of Meiko Satomura, we actually didn't see an announcement or a trailer or a reveal, anything like Pro Wrestling Noah working with AJ Styles, right? This is something that happened randomly, and the fact that it's 2024 and WWE superstars might actually pop up in other places at random, it's very crazy, but it makes it fun to even follow wrestling companies that aren't the WWE, because you literally never know what can happen. So yeah, what do you guys think it is? Do you think WWE is trying to expand into Japan and this is the way they're doing it? Or do you think this is WWE just being a little bit more lenient because she doesn't live in America and she's not competing actively on WWE television? I don't know. I do hope one day that Triple H does give Meiko Satomura a major pay-per-view match in WWE, because I think wrestling fans would be absolutely in love with it. But for now, we've only seen her in NXT and not the main roster. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Ango Show.